Last month, I shared a design for a Dolby Atmos home theater setup that was not only incredibly renter-friendly and stylish, but also worked great in small spaces. And a lot of you liked that video and have asked for more. So this time, my goal is to create a home theater that is completely hidden when not in use. To pull off a truly hidden home theater means we're going to be looking at in-wall or in-ceiling speakers. Now, the biggest drawback to in-wall or in-ceiling speakers is that you have to physically cut into the drywall, which I know isn't always an option, especially if you rent. That said, there are some notable benefits to taking this route. First, they are obviously less obtrusive and way easier to conceal than their freestanding or stand-mounted counterparts. And this can come in handy, especially if you have kids or maybe pets who insist on touching everything they see, or you have a spouse who's not as, keen on a room full of speakers. They come in a lot of different sizes and formats, making them very flexible when it comes to working with various decor styles and spaces. Heck, you can even paint the speaker grills to match your room. And since they lack, a traditional cabinet, they're often less expensive, all while still allowing you to experience similar levels of sound quality as traditional speakers. Starting with a more budget-friendly option, one of my go-to bookshelf speakers for those wanting a more punchy, dynamic, and exciting sound is the 600M Mark II from Klipsch, which is going to run you around $560 for the pair. They can work well with a variety of content and can recreate the thrills of a cinema experience for a relatively low price. They have surprising bass, so if you're tight on space or don't want to piss off your neighbors, you could get by without a sub. But if we ditch the 600M's cabinet and instead look at its in-wall equivalent, we can save quite a bit. The R5650 W2 retails for $129 each, or $258 a pair. That's less than half the cost of its bookshelf brother. The 5650 features a 6.5-inch woofer, similar to the one in the 600M, as well as a 1-inch tweeter, which is also the same size and material as the tweeter used in the bookshelf. Now, since these lack a traditional cabinet, we will sacrifice a little bit of bass output, but stick with me, because a fix is coming up. 5 5650s will run us $645, meaning that for a little bit more than the cost of a pair of 600M Mark IIs, we now have 5 speakers to build a 5-channel home theater with. Of course, if we wanted to kick things up a notch and get an in-wall speaker with a little bit more finesse and refinement, but one that still sounds exciting, we could spec Bowers & Wilkins CWM 663 at $950 a pair. The 663s are going to be comparable to B&W's 606 S3 bookshelf speakers for about $150 less. I like B&W in-wall speakers and have used them in past home theaters. I even used them in my old office where we would often screen movies before their release. Now, 5 663s will set us back $2,850 to be exact, which is more than the Klipsch, but a far cry from the amount we would have to spend on the equivalent freestanding setup. Now, if you want to experience even higher levels of fidelity without sacrificing physical or visual floor space, there's the B&W CWM 7.3 S2 at $2,500 each, which is essentially a 700 series tower in your wall. Focal's 300 IW6 LCR at $1,299 each, again, another tower-like in-wall speaker. And finally, Monitor Audio's W2MCP at $1,250 each, all of which are worth considering. However, I'm not content with this home theater being an old-school 5.1 setup. We want to take advantage of the latest Atmos-encoded music and movies, which means we need to specify some overhead or in-ceiling speakers to complement our 5 main channels. Now, I'm going to go ahead and spec 2 overhead height channels, giving us a 5.1.2 Dolby Atmos setup. If you want more overhead channels, you do you, though in my experience 2 is often enough. And for our Atmos speaker, I'm going with what I use, and that's the Klipsch CDT 3800. At $139 each, a pair will only add $278 to the budget. While you can spend more by opting for something from B&W, Focal, Revel, or similar, I've paired our Klipsch in-ceiling speakers with loudspeakers that range from affordable to cost no object, and I have never once felt as if they weren't pulling their weight in terms of performance. Lastly, and this is very important, if your room does not have parallel walls to install, your in-wall surround speakers into, buy however many of these Klipsch speakers that are necessary for surround sound duties as well. Now, depending on your tastes, budget, and whether or not you have neighbors or maybe family members who may not always appreciate their rooms rattling every time you want to watch a movie, you can skip the subwoofer. Just know that all of the speakers that we have discussed so far are not true full-range speakers. If you want the best home cinema experience, a subwoofer is essential. Now, I'm not suggesting that the system we're building would be, lost without one. I just really want to manage your expectations. For this build, I'm sticking with what I know and that I have no qualms recommending, and that is SVS's 3000 in-wall subwoofer priced at just under $2,000. Now, up until this point, many of our speakers have represented a far greater value for money than, say, the 3000 in-wall sub. However, there's a bit more that goes into building an in-wall subwoofer compared to, say, a loudspeaker, including how to power it. In the case of the SVS, this involves a separate amplifier, which thankfully is included. While you may find less expensive in-wall subwoofer options online, many of those do not come with the amplifier needed to drive them properly, which is going to add to their cost. So bear that in mind. For $2,000, the 3000 in-wall will round out our system's bottom end and give us the punch all great theaters need. So for those keeping score, this Klipsch in-wall and in-ceiling setup plus the SVS sub creating a 5.1.2 Dolby Atmos package comes in at $2,923, which is $1,000 less than its freestanding counterparts. And like in our previous video outlining the accessories needed to wire up a 5.1.2 on-wall system, you'll need to budget for things like CL-rated or in-wall compliant speaker cables, as well as maybe some CL-rated HDMI cables too. I will link to a variety of options in the description to make your search a little easier, as we now need to focus on the remaining two items, power and visuals. For this build, I'm going with the Onkyo RZ30. The RZ30, which retails for $999, is still my budget AVR of choice and one that will have no problems controlling our Dolby Atmos speaker system. While I'm confident the RZ30 will drive any of the speakers we've discussed so far, if you want to leave no doubt, especially when you're speccing higher end options, you can go up market and spec, an Onkyo RZ70, a Sony 7000 ES, or Marantz Cinema 30. And you're gonna follow the same steps covered in our last build video to set up the Onkyo and connect your in-wall speakers and subwoofers, which I'll link to right here. And in the meantime, let's move on to projectors. That's right, I said projectors. At the start of this video, I mentioned that one of the goals of this build was to have it completely hidden from view when not in use, and that includes the screen. Now, if you don't want to fuss with projectors, I get it. I typically don't want to either, in which case, please take a peek at TCL's new QM8K Mini LED TV, Sony's Bravia 7 or 9 models, or for you diehard videophiles, LG's C5 OLED. You may even save a little bit of money going this route. Just know that if you wall mount your TV, you may need to mount the center in-wall underneath it, or you may need to forego a center speaker altogether if you place the TV on its stand on top of an entertainment center. Now, one of the benefits of a front projection setup is the ability to use what's known as an acoustically transparent screen, meaning that the projection screen material has small, almost imperceivable holes for sound to pass through. And this allows you to mount your speakers directly behind the screen, ensuring that the sound is always in perfect alignment with the visuals, just like in a real theater. However, like a TV, when a fixed frame projection screen isn't in use, it's a blank white or gray rectangle, which isn't hidden at all. Thankfully though, you can find acoustically transparent screens that retract, or in the case of this build, rise. Here I've chosen Vivid Storm's 100-inch perforated floor rising screen. I have a version of this screen that I use, from time to time, and while it doesn't compete or beat screens from, say, SI or Stewart, it is beyond acceptable for, I'm gonna guess, 95% of enthusiasts and viewers. Since this is a floor rising screen and not a drop-down one, it's easier to hide it behind a media console or credenza that we're going to need to house our AV receiver and subwoofer amplifier. Now I know what you're thinking. Since the Vivid Storm is a floor-rising screen, we need an ultra short throw projector. You can do that. However, I don't like UST projectors. They can be a pain to set up and are pretty expensive, which is why I'm going with the more traditional LCD or DLP projector. And on the budget side, there is the ultra portable Samsung Freestyle Gen 2 at $600, which is roughly the size of a can of Coke and features built-in apps for services like Netflix. A single HDMI cable connection between it and your AVR is all you need to enjoy the show. And since it is so small, you could hide it inside your console when it's not in use. But I know we can get an even better picture, so I recommend upgrading to something like the 2350 from Epson's home cinema line. I had a previous generation model and it served me really well. Epson has really cornered the market when it comes to making bright, high quality, and easy to use LCD front projectors on a budget. At $9.99, this projector is another solid example of that. Plus it has built-in apps, meaning it's just as easy to plug and play when it comes time to binge a show or watch the latest Hollywood release. But if you really want to go for it, look at one of Epson or Sony's laser projectors or one of JVC's exceptional DILA projectors. Though admittedly, one of these projectors will probably cost more than the rest of the entire system we've laid out today, and even as much or more than an 85 to 98 inch Sony or TCL TV. While you can go big for less with a projector, I never claimed that having a truly cinematic image at this scale was ever cheap. So where does that leave us? Well, if we've stuck with the Klipsch Onkyo Epson combo, we have a true 5.1.2 Dolby Atmos cinema with a 100-inch screen that disappears from view when not in use, and all for around $6,000, which I know, it sounds like a lot, but it is a drop in the bucket compared to what you could spend and still not come away with a demonstrably better experience. So that's my idea for a completely hidden home theater. What did you guys think? What do you think? Do you like this series? And if you do, sound off in the comments. Tell me what kind of build you would like to see me tackle next, because these are a lot of fun. I like going on these little exercises. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video. Remember, the only person who has to like the sound or sight of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.